The government of Venezuelan President Maduro said Sunday that his country's security forces captured a group of mercenaries aligned with the CIA less than 2 weeks after Trump confirmed his authorization of covert CIA action against the South American nation. Being able to determine that a false flag attack is underway from waters bordering Trinidad and Tobago or from Trinidad or Venezuelan territory itself. You'll notice that they're not saying these are CIA. They're saying these are mercenaries who have been advised or informed by the CIA. And that has been the standard operating procedure for the CIA in Venezuela, was not to actually send CIA into the country, but instead to advise and help either far right-wing lunatics in Venezuela to commit sabotage of critical infrastructure, or to help mercenaries coming from outside Venezuela to try and invade Venezuela, as in the Bay of Piglets. This planned action perfectly evokes the provocation of the battleship Maine and the Gulf of Tonkin, which gave rise to the war against Spain to seize Cuba in 1898 and allowed the U.S. Congress to authorize involvement in an eternal war against Vietnam in 1964. They admitted, the Secretary of Defense, McNamara, admitted years later that the U.S. ship was being fired upon by truly ruthless, killer rain clouds. Literally, the U.S. fired bullets at rain clouds for 2 hours. They claimed that on the radar, it looked like the rain clouds were probably enemy combatants. But either way, whether they actually fell for thinking the rain clouds were attacking them, or whether it was, we thought the rain clouds were. Either way, it's a false flag. It was used to get boots on the ground in Vietnam at the time and get Congress to approve boots on the ground. To continue from the statement, the government of Prime Minister Kamala Persad Bissessar, this is the Prime Minister of Trinidad, has renounced the sovereignty of Trinidad and Tobago to act as a military colony subordinate to U.S. hegemonic interests, turning its territory into a U.S. aircraft carrier for war throughout the Caribbean against Venezuela, Colombia, and all of South America. At least 43 people have been killed in the U.S. boat strikes in the Southern Caribbean. Trump administration deployed an armada of warships out to the Caribbean, said Friday that it ordered the USS Gerald Ford carrier strike group off the coast of Venezuela, which possesses the world's largest oil reserves. The U.S. has helped install and prop up brutal dictators and assisted in the subversion of democratic movements, including by training Venezuelan forces in torture and repression at notorious U.S. Army School of the Americas. In the 21st century, successive U.S. administrations, beginning with George W. Bush, have tried to thwart the Bolivarian revolution that was launched by former President Hugo Chavez and continued under Maduro. During the first Trump administration, Venezuela foiled an attempt to buy a group of mercenaries, including 2 Americans, to invade the country and topple Maduro. Tens of thousands of Venezuelans have also died as a result of U.S. economic sanctions, according to research from the Center for Economic and Policy Research. And I'll just throw in here that the U.S. did coup Chavez successfully for whatever it was, 2 days, I think. They actually kidnapped him, got him out of office. The people of Venezuela stood up and demanded he be returned, and he ultimately was returned to the presidency. Then several years later, he dies of rather fast-acting cancer. And I know it is complete lunacy to think the CIA would ever be able to use cancer to kill someone. Jack Ruby, the CIA has no ability to ever give someone cancer. Jack Ruby. So I'm just, and so they couldn't have had any involvement in that. Certainly not. Once again, the empire and its accomplices seek to bend the sovereign will of the Venezuelan people through a criminal economic siege that flagrantly violates the Charter of the UN and international humanitarian law. These actions are not only illegal, they are an unconventional act of war that we are determined to face and defeat in all scenarios. I think this is an important step for Venezuela, is to catch these people who are going to commit false flags. As Maduro himself said, if this were Iraq, they would claim Maduro had weapons of mass destruction, but they feel like that lie is not going to work this time around. So instead, they've switched to narco-terrorism, a term they made up that doesn't mean anything. But here's another revelation of the efforts the U.S. is going to try and take out Maduro, to try and take down Venezuela. Also is amping up these attacks because they're having no success at like making China falter or become unstable. So like that effort seems to not be working. So instead, the U.S. is like, well, let's make sure we get all these smaller countries and get their resources since we're not having success with taking down China. Anyway, this is coming from the AP, but you'll notice even as they're revealing, the title of it is U.S. sought to lure Nicolas Maduro's pilot into betraying the Venezuelan leader. So even as they're revealing breaking of international law, efforts by the United States to kidnap and kill a leader of a sovereign country that we're supposedly not at war with, all of those things, even as they're revealing that, they also want you to know that Maduro's still evil, okay? Let's just be clear there. Maduro is still, oh God, what a bad guy. So this is written in the AP by Mr. Propagandist Joshua Goodman. Let's name the people, right? Who are these propagandists? The federal agent had, and he starts off in a very film noir way. The federal agent had a daring pitch for Nicolas Maduro's chief pilot. All he had to do was surreptitiously divert the Venezuelan president's plane to a place where U.S. authorities could nab the strongman. Well, first of all, he's revealing awful crimes by the United States if it were to happen, right? But of course, the AP has to say the strongman. Only the people we hate are strong men, right? Netanyahu, who's been president of Israel on and off for roughly 900 years, not a strong man, right? Committing genocide, nothing seems to ever stick to him. It's corruption, everything else always seems to be president. He's not a strong man, right? That doesn't qualify as strong man. No. Democratically elected. Not a strong man, right? But Maduro, the former bus driver, total strong man. In exchange, the agent told the pilot in a clandestine meeting that the aviator would be made very rich. The conversation was tense, and the pilot left non-committal, though they exchanged a cell number and a sign that he might be interested in helping the U.S. government. Over the next 16 months, even after retiring from his government job in July, the agent, Lopez, kept at it, chatting with the pilot over encrypted messaging. The intrigue-filled saga of how Lopez tried to flip the pilot has all the elements of the Cold War spy thriller: luxury private jets, a secret meeting in airport hangar, high-stakes diplomacy, and the delicate wooing of a key Maduro lieutenant. There was even a final machination aimed at rattling the Venezuelan president about the pilot's true loyalties. But so this is revealing, despite the propagandistic language, this is revealing attempted egregious crimes by the U.S. This is what we do. And we're doing it against Venezuela right now, doing everything we can to coup this country that has done nothing to us, that has done absolutely nothing to us. And, if you need a reminder, even these drug claims are ridiculously false. The estimate is that 5% of the drugs that enter the U.S. even go through Venezuela, and none of them are being grown in Venezuela. So it makes a lot of sense that Trump is just dying to go after Venezuela. Of course, the real reason is oil, both stealing it and making sure it's not pumped outside of the petrodollar.